Tonight, I'm going to start a series called Mars Hill, and it's just biblical answers to modern day problems and culture. It's culture and Christianity. We're talking about some things maybe we don't always talk about, and it'll be a short talk. It's the first one, so hopefully this preacher can keep it short. But this one article, you may not realize it, but Americans are turning to Buddhism is really picking up in America. A lot of people are ignorant about that. And it was an article in Atlanta Monthly. This lady writes about why are so many Americans turning to Buddhism? And the short answer that's given is basically mental health. To be sure, mental health is something everyone's looking for, find a way to kind of calm down their crazy mind. And she writes, it's not about spiritual enlightenment or faith community, but rather hoping for a quick boost of cognitive healing. In other words, their brain wants some wholeness for their brain and their thought process. And just, they say, and she writes, because people seem to be running out of options. Mental health and disorders in the Western world, it keeps rising, especially in societies like ours that are basically affluent and blessed. And she said, it seems like no one really has the answers for this generation. It doesn't seem like church attendance is helping because it's on a down. And there's always therapy people can go to, but therapy generally is very, very expensive. So maybe that's why it's so inexpensive to turn to Buddha or meditation, because meditation classes only cost $12. And the whole idea is about what's going on, and people want to find a way to calm their mind. When I was growing up, I remember this. It's kind of crazy because I was so young, and I used to go to my rooftop. On top of our house, I'd climb up and go on the rooftop. And I would lay on the rooftop and I'd look up at the stars. And I remember, I don't know how old I was old enough to climb up, so maybe 13 maybe, I don't know. But I remember laying on the top of my roof and just looking up and just looking at the stars. This is in Phoenix. It must have been fall because you can't see nothing during the summer. I think it's all dirty air. But this is 35 years ago. No, probably longer than that, 10 years ago. Anyway, it's been a while, so I lay there on the roof, and I remember looking up at the stars and looking. I'd talk to God, and I remember I'm just a teenager. I'd never heard the gospel, didn't know nothing about Jesus Christ or none of that, but I'd start to talk to God as a young man, and I'd look up, and I didn't know if there was a God or not. I would say, what am I here for? And I'd look up, and I don't know who or what I was talking to. And I'd look at the stars, and I would ask God, well, why am I on the earth? What am I here for? Is this all there is? And I'd look, and I was hoping I'd hear an answer, but there's never no answer. Maybe that's why I made up a friend. I had a close friend. I made him up. My mom said, yeah, keep yourself company. You always had a made-up friend. This invisible friend I had. I just had a great imagination. So I'm up there looking, and I wouldn't get an answer. But I remember asking those questions, and I thought, as I lived, even so young, I'd be walking around, and this sounds crazy, but I remember just walking around our house, walking down the alleys, walking up and down the alleys, and talking to God about my life, even though I didn't know God. I'd say, I don't want to grow up. And I would think like this is crazy for this young, I guess. Now it's maybe crazy, but I'd say, I don't want to grow up and have to have a house and have to have all the bills. You got to pay a mortgage for like 30, 40 years. That's a long time. And I would get all these things, and I'd worry about life. And I was only 12 or 13 years old. And I'd say, I don't really want to live here. I mean, this is all there is in life. I really don't want to live here. There's got to be more to it. And I didn't know it. But inside of all of us, there's that longing for something. It's called transcendence, something beyond ourselves that we don't realize we all want. I couldn't put a name on it, but there's something innate. There's something, in other words, something we're born with. Every one of us, we may not say it correctly. We may not know it, how to even say it, but there's something inside of all of us. We know there's got to be more to life than just this world. Now, today in America, people seem to be obsessed with happiness. People think the purpose of life is basically to be happy. And so the world has told us the path to happiness is success. And this is what the world has said to help these people that want to find happiness. And they say that the road to happiness is basically an ideal job. So people search for the ideal job, and they get the ideal job, and they're still empty. And so they find their perfect boyfriend, or they find their perfect girlfriend, or they find their soulmate, or they get their beautiful apartment, or they have their brand new house, they got a beautiful car, or maybe they have campers. I don't know. But whatever it is, and it's amazing because people think that I have these things, something I've always longed for and wanted, I'm going to feel fulfilled. I'm going to feel like I feel complete. I feel okay now. But what they're finding out that's driving experts crazy is even though we're one of the blessed nations in the entire world, people are not happy. There are more stressed and more mental illnesses now than almost ever before. And they look and they search. It's not what they think it is. Data shows this. Listen to this. Data shows that chasing happiness can make people unhappy. Let me go back. I talk about people finding the ideal boyfriend or ideal girlfriend, and people really think like this. How many know that? They think if I just find the perfect guy, well, if you find the perfect guy, I'm not sure he'd want you. Anyway, okay. But I was driving, and I've done this before. I saw this couple a couple days ago. They had pulled off to a parking lot, but I could see them out of my window a little ways away by themselves. They kind of pull up, and they get out of their cars, each one of them. And you can tell kind of when people are a little on edge. So the girl gets out of her car, and she's kind of looking around. And the guy gets out, they park like this. And they get out, and they look around. And I'm thinking, the reason why they're looking around, they feel maybe guilty, right? And so I see that, and now I see, what would Carrie do? So I drive by, and I waited a second, and they started holding each other, just going crazy. And I, hey, haven't seen you for a while. And the guy goes, he's looking at me like, well, and he's probably thinking, and what he's thinking is, someone saw me. Who saw me? Who knows me? We're away. No one can catch us. We just got busted by someone I don't even know, some old bald-headed white guy. Anyway, okay, I got off on that one. I don't know. That's me. But what really stands out, and I mentioned this months ago, is that the suicide rate has been rising around the world. We know that. But in America, as of 2017, it had reached a 30-year high. And even though objectively our lives are better than they've ever been before, better than, we have it easier than we've ever had it before, but people are taking their lives. I'm not doing one tonight on depression, but here's my point. People aren't happy. They do a study on the happiest countries of the world. America hasn't broken in the top 10 ever. The top place to live is Denmark, Iceland. Iceland, that's cold, man. Who would want to live there? Switzerland, Netherlands, Canada, New Zealand, Sweden, and Australia. And it goes on. America has never broken into that. And so I thought, well, what happened? And said, recently America dropped down to number 18th, even though life here is supposed to be the easiest in the entire world to live. It's supposed to be America. But yet we rank number 18th in the entire world for the happiest people. But one study, America's in the top 3 in this one. They're number 3. Thank God they're not number 1. And what do you think it's in? Well, number 3. Number 1 is China. Number 2 is India. Number 3 is the U.S. And these 3 categories, depression, America is number 3 in the entire world. America is number 3 with anxiety problems. America is number 3 with alcohol and drug abuse. People today feel more hopeless, depressed than ever before. And here's my point. There is an emptiness gnawing away at people, and you don't have to be clinically depressed to feel it. People know that there is something more to life than trying to be happy. They are missing something, and they know it, but they don't know how to say it. They don't know what they're missing. And according to research, what predicts despair is not a lack of happiness. And I'm quoting things that we're talking to you about. These are not from Christian articles. This is what they're discovering. It's not a lack of happiness. It's a lack of something else. It's a lack of having meaning, which the next month I will do it on the life, having a life of meaning. But they also say this. We're finding out there's something beyond so we want, every one of us, we have a longing in our souls for something beyond ourselves. They may call it a different God. They may call it a different spirit. They just know, the experts know that humans, people, human beings, there's something inside of us that we long for something else beyond ourselves. They took some kids. It's an interesting study. And the article is called a transcendence moment. So they took these kids, students, they took them out and had them look at these trees. These trees are 200 feet tall, eucalyptus trees. So this was a study. The kids have no idea what they're doing. They take these kids out. They're walking around this little like forest type thing, looking at these trees, 200 feet tall. They're young children. And they have them watch and look at the trees for 1 minute. And looking at them. And after they looked at them for 1 minute, they stood there in awe. Like a little child would do, how big those trees are. Then they watched how they interacted with people around them. After looking at the trees, the children were nicer to each other. After looking at the trees, the children wanted to help, serve, do things for others before they worked that way. What happened? They believed the kids saw something a lot bigger than themselves. And they were grabbed by it. Here's my point. Transcendence. It'll be up on the board here. It's going beyond the ordinary limits, surpassing exceedingly. Transcendent states that are those rare moments when we're lifted above the hustle and the bustle of daily life, and your sense of self fades away, and you feel connected to a higher reality. There is a search for what I'm talking about. I couldn't name it as a child, but there's a search for something beyond ourselves. Bible says in Psalms chapter 63, it's a search for what I'm talking about tonight. Psalm 63, verse 1 through 3. O God, you are my God. Earnestly I will seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My body longs for you in a dry and a weary land where there is no water. I have seen you in the sanctuary. I behold your power and your glory. Because your love is better than life, my lips will glorify you. And this psalm is about the thirst for transcendence. That in every human heart, there's this longing. Different translations says, I thirst for you. My whole being longs for you. My heart wants you. It's a longing for it. It's a fainting for it. It must have, and everyone, they want this, and it will not be denied. I want this. It's always going to be there. I'm not going to be denied. And that's the heart that's found in Psalms. Transcendence is an intimacy with an infinite God, our Creator. Therefore, this thirst for transcendence cannot go away. And the psalmist says it's fundamental to the human heart. And its only resolution is found right there. The human heart must meet God. We all want something greater than ourselves. It's intimacy with God. It's intimacy with Christ who died for us. Another version says, my entire being cries out for connection to God. My soul needs God like my body needs water, and that's how deep the drive is. I don't know if you've ever been, I know in America we always say, I'm starving. I don't think any of us ever starved. We exaggerate everything. I'm starving. Kids come home, Dad, Mom, I'm starving. You don't think you're starving. Look at you. But have you ever been in a place where you had no water? I remember going to Africa, and this is many years ago. It was pretty crazy in Ghana, Accra, and you could not drink just any water, especially an American. You had to drink filtered water. It was hot. When we first got there, we didn't know anybody. We were trying to work things out. But just to get water, find a place to get water that you can actually drink, until we found a place. I've never been in a position like that where I sometimes had to look for water, some clean water just to drink. And when it's hot, it's kind of weird when you get real thirsty. I'm sure we've all been at a place where we got real thirsty. And you get real thirsty, it can overtake you, especially if it's serious thirst. Listen to what it says about thirst, the human will. So your body begins to cry out when you desperately need water. Psychologically and physically, you will go crazy. Psychologically, you start to see water everywhere. You have mirages. You have hallucinations. You have, somebody say it. Thank you. At least somebody can say it. What have you been on today, Pastor? I don't know. I was having some own. Anyway, I'm not going to try to say it again. But they say, listen to what it says. It says, when you're this thirsty, your body, you begin to see things that aren't there, like I mentioned. Even though it's not there, you see it everywhere. Even though it's not there, you see things that aren't even there. You search, and they say your body goes crazy just to get a little moisture. You'll grab almost anything. It says you'll put things in your mouth you would never think about putting in your mouth otherwise. And you know what that is a picture of? That's a picture of a soul longing for something outside of itself. It goes after everything this world has, and it don't satisfy. It thirsts to fill itself. It takes drugs. It does this. It's pleasure. You name it, they do it. And they find out, even after I've got all of this, I'm still so empty. The psalmist says, every one of us have a need to be connected with God. And the human need for that is that which is beyond the natural. It's beyond the physical. It's you and I wanting to be in touch, and we don't understand it. We want to be in touch with God. Let me read one little thing to you about experts. You know, you may not realize this, but the experts, they've a lot of times the experts, and I tweeted this, the only thing experts have been expert at is predicting that they weren't experts. They've been wrong about a lot of things. I won't get into anything, but they've been wrong about a lot of things. And they predicted, the experts of our world predicted that religion would diminish in societies and countries as people got smarter and smarter. The only reason religion exists is because we're pretty primitive. And they went on to say, as long as human beings feel helpless and they don't understand their surroundings, of course they're going to need God. But as soon as they come to this deep understanding of their surroundings, they begin to understand what lightning is and thunder is and how the physical body works. They won't need God. They won't need God at all because now they're so smart, they understand all things. But what was amazing is that everything they thought would happen didn't happen. And what they found out was, as life got more complicated and now we have more and more knowledge than ever before, it's the opposite. There's more of a longing today than there's ever been. They were completely wrong. The more we explain things, the more technologies we've become to have, the more scientific we become. It doesn't matter. Even though we can explain all kinds of things, this longing has never gone away. And they say there's not an anthropologist, psychologist, or sociologist that would disagree with that right now. Today, there is an urge for something beyond ourselves. Listen to this. Take a look at the New Age movement, for example. Who would have thought 50 years ago there'd be an explosion of the New Age movement that there is today in America? There's a rise in reincarnation. There's a rise, believe it or not, in witchcraft, believe it or not, in paganism, astral projection, astrology, spirit channeling. Even Hollywood's into spirit channeling. They're crazy. They said they could not believe, and they have no answers. Why are all these people going after all these things? Because in every side, every human being, there's a longing to know God and be connected to God. And all these are cries of the human will. Look at these pictures quickly. By the way, that's where we're going camping. It's called Harupa Park. If you got a great imagination, there you will have it. I show this because when people go into nature and they see something like that, or you find anyone, probably most people, the millions watching, you can relate to this. You go out someplace, the forest, or someplace where it's pitch dark, no pollution, you look up and see all these stars. Something grabs you. It doesn't matter what you believe, you look at all it. So I'll tell you what, it speaks to you. Something says to you, and you know there's a God. Where'd you get that from? You know because you know. This is what Romans says. Romans 1:20, by taking a long and thoughtful look at what God has created, people have always been able to see with their eyes, as such can't see, eternal power, for instance, and the mystery of his divine being, so nobody has a good excuse. And you look out and you get that awe moment, you look around and go, so beautiful. And you just say it. Sometimes people aren't even believers. Just look what God created. You don't even know God. Why would you say that? Because it's in us. Somehow, for one moment, we acknowledge there's a God out there that created this. We didn't create this ourselves. It's unbelievable. That's what I'm talking about. Ecclesiastes 3, verse 11, before I close, listen to what it says. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also put eternity in their hearts, except that no one can find out what the works of God does from beginning to end. Man is linked to eternity. It says he put eternity in his heart. In other words, man is linked to heaven. Every person God has placed within every person an inborn desire for something beyond our earthly existence. That's what I was longing for as a boy. I didn't know what I was longing for. I was longing to know God and be connected to God. And until a person is connected to God again, they'll always feel like they're empty. They'll always feel like they're missing something. No matter, they have the car, they have the house, and they have some money, or they have whatever they may have. Because God made you. God put eternity in your heart. And that eternity in your heart can only be met with when you meet God. And when you meet Jesus Christ, he comes into your heart and you become connected to God. You become connected now to eternity. Until that takes place, you always feel empty. Always. I want you to bow your heads tonight. Transcendence. The Bible says God has planted eternity in our hearts. Even the atheists know there's a God. And people want to try to run away or drown out the voice of God. Backsliders try to do it. But they will even lie to themselves. I don't believe in God anymore. But yet they're out there in God's creation or someplace. There's a voice. They know because they know there is a God. And that one day they'll stand before him. If they're a backslider, they know that. But his desire and our desire doesn't start with us. It started with God first. The Bible says we love God because he first loved us. The Bible says while we are yet sinners, Christ died for us. So I ask you this question before we dismiss and move on. Tonight, will you link your heart with eternity? And the only way you link your heart with eternity is when you meet Jesus Christ. Until that happens, no matter what you do, doesn't matter where you go, there will always be an emptiness gnawing away at you. And you're here tonight and say, you know what, Pastor, I want to give my life to Christ. Like you as a boy, I know I'm missing. There's something not right. And you're here tonight. You want to give your life to Christ. All I want you to do is lift up your hand. Just lift up your hand tonight. I see that hand. Anybody else? You say, you know what? I really want to give my life to Christ, Pastor. You can tell yourself, I'm okay. You're not okay unless you're in Christ. You're not. Your heart longs for God. Anybody else? Anybody else? With our heads bowed tonight, we're going to do one other thing. We're going to stand and sing a song. Someone come and pray with Mondre. Let's all stand. If you just want to come and just pray for a moment, feel free to do that. Let's all stand tonight. We're going to sing the worship.